here we go with round 2. We are on the draw, but we have a very nice curve and our mana is fixed as well. I'm not going to mulligan. We also have the interesting decision what to play on turn 2, but I feel like it has to be the specialist. Oh, the Shamble Shark. It's even better. We can pump the Shamble Shark with all the cards we have in our hand, with the Incursion Specialist actually making it into a 4-3. So that's pretty amazing. I'm not going to trade here. I think that taking some damage isn't what you want to be doing against Extort, but Extort is much more of a late game strategy. And we are going to put up a lot of pressure here. It's possible that he's going to get us with some sort of edict effect, but I'm going to go for Rogue because we can still pump the Shamble Shark with Incursion Specialist, and the Rogue is basically guaranteed to get through next turn if he doesn't play the 2-3 flyer, and even then we might want to attack thanks to Slaughterhorn. Now it looks like we are getting edicted here. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but it's also not the end of the world. Still think that we can't block that Syndic of Tithes because the evasiveness of the Death Cult Rogue is just too important. So the question here is if he has another edict, but we can't do anything about that. So let's attack first. It also looks like he's stuck on 3, so Extort isn't a big deal. Now that specialist needs 2 spells to become 3/3 unblockable. So if we Verdant Haven and Specialist, then we are sure to drop Sprite and Alley Broker next turn, but I think it's better to just drop Specialist and Sprite, and then if we draw a land... Well, we want to get that Alley Broker into play as soon as possible, so it might actually be correct to just go Verdant Haven Specialist, ensuring that this gets through next turn and that we can cast the Broker. Yeah, that actually seems better. I'm going to put this on first. So he has a removal spell for the Death Cult Rogue after all, which is really unfortunate, but at least we got a hard removal out of him, and he has been casting some good spells against us, but Bane Alley Broker is actually perfect against what he's doing here. He could have Aerial Maneuver, which we could draw out of his hand. Otherwise we don't really have a blocker for the Syndic anyway. It's kind of unfortunate that this allows him to use his mana, but Incursion Specialist is not how we are going to win this game, so if he has Aerial Maneuver, that's fine. Yeah, I think that's a fair deal here. If he keeps attacking, we might then want to block with Bane Alley Broker. So here, if we drop Shamble Shark, then we want to make sure it becomes a 3 toughness creature, which we can only do with Bane Alley Broker. So getting that Bane Alley Broker down is one of my main priorities, though. I think that trading Shamble Shark for Syndic of Tithe is fine. What we don't want to happen is him dropping a 4 toughness creature and our Shamble Shark just sitting there. So making Shamble Shark a 4/3 is, I believe, worth it. Let's just hope he doesn't play a land that lets us discard our remaining cards. Given that he's played 2 of his removal spells already, and that we have an Alley Broker coming up, it's very likely that we want to get rid of the Syndic of Tithes, but he doesn't even allow us to trade here. Doesn't want to attack. Shadow Slice is going to come in very handy on that Metropolis Sprite most likely, but we still want to get the Broker into play first. Slaughterhorn and Metropolis Sprite are also very good in conjunction. Now we know that we don't want to trade the Sprite for any of these because of the Shadow Slice, so I'm just going to get in there, and then if he has a white drop we won't be able to block, but I think this race is looking much better for us than he probably thinks it is. We have 9 damage just from the cards in our hand. And if he taps out for a white creature that isn't Assault Griffin, we are also more or less guaranteed to get in with the Sprite. Well, he could have land and Guardian of the Gateless, but there aren't too many commons that are going to be able to tap our Broker and block our creatures next turn. Gift of Arzova is interesting. It does threaten something which we can't really deal with that easily. A 3/3 flying lifelink creature is not what our deck is very well equipped to beat. So Burst of Strength is interesting in multiple ways because we can untap the Sprite to block his 3/3 flyer, and that could be very valuable, but we also want the Sprite as our main offensive weapon here, so I'm not sure how to proceed with that. Now, blocking that Denizen has to be a good idea, and that would be best with that Burst of Strength. So yeah, we are very far from killing him. So if we use that Broker now, we don't have a blocker for Syndic of Tithes, and we don't want to take unnecessary amounts of damage. We are going to lose the Sprite if we block, so what we might want to do instead is just Shadow Slice the Sprite and attack with everything, dealing 11 damage, and hopefully forcing him to stay back with the Denizen. If he has another removal spell for the Sprite, then we need some help anyway, and it still allows us to play our spells here. It's also not unlikely that it forces him to stay back to block, which I kind of like. The alternative here would be to cast the Shadow Slice on the Shamble Shark, but I don't think that's what you want to be doing. There are several cards that we don't want to see here. Smite being one of them. But I think this line gives us a relatively good shot at putting him in a position where he wants to block with his flyer, and our Slaughterhorn does the most. That's unfortunate. That Killing Glare would have been very easy to counter with what we have, but of course not when we are tapped out. Yeah, so he did have the removal spell, and he probably he would have been able to use that had we tried to untap. He's also not extorting, so we have something else coming up. Another extort creature. So he's going up to 9 from the lifelink, and that means we're going to be 1 damage short from killing him with Shamble Shark. If he doesn't attack here, then our hand is actually great. But I can't see that happening. We could also draw Hands of Binding, which would be great. That Disciple doesn't pump the Shamble Shark. Yeah, we want something to play next turn. That's the thing. We're going to deal him quite a bit of damage, and that Burst of Strength is not what we want if he double... Well, it's what we want if he double blocks. The Slaughterhorn is probably not what we want if he double blocks. And we aren't going to cast the Slaughterhorn. We would cast the Disciple instead. So maybe removing the Slaughterhorn is the better play. We can only deal 8 and he's on 9, so yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, but I think Disciple is where we should take this. And another great card here. It doesn't trigger Evolve, but it's basically the perfect card to draw, given that we can block this easily. It looks like putting Verdant Haven on a forest isn't a good idea, because we have Bane Alley Broker, and that needs blue-black, so we can't leave that open with the Verdant Haven, which is... I don't know if I want to call it a mistake, but it's certainly not optimal for us. Now what is optimal is this double block. It does mean that we get to Burst of Strength here. Killing both of his creatures. Now let's see. We can make. Oh, we only have 4 mana, so we can't actually get back that Slaughterhorn anyway if we cast Drakewing Crisis. So I guess it doesn't matter. We can activate the Broker first and see what we draw, because we want to do that every turn anyway. Alternatively, we can drop the Disciple and get the Slaughterhorn, but having a blocker for his lifelinker is the most important thing here. Keymaster Rogue, also not the worst card, but I feel like if the Crisis lives, then everything is fine, and we might not have the time for the Keymaster Rogue to become an important part. I think we can exile that currently. We did draw an aerial maneuver out of his hand on turn 3. So the Craces might be successful here. And if not, we need a new plan. So that's a nice 6-6 against our 5-4. Interestingly enough, the Slaughterhorn isn't enough to push through with the Shamble Shark, but even if the white was only a 5-5, then we would make it a 6-6 by discarding Slaughterhorn, so it's never going to be able to do that actually. Now, I still think that... No, well, let's see. Trading Shamble Shark and Slaughterhorn for white of Precinct 6 is just worse than trying to block it, I feel like. So... let's see, we kind of want the Keymaster now that it looks like this. And double blocking is still kind of risky against any kind of tricks he might have. If he has a Smite, then attacking here and using the Slaughterhorn is suicidal, but I have a feeling that getting rid of that white of Precinct 6 is the most important thing we need to do in this game. So I'm actually kind of interested in just attacking, getting back the Slaughterhorn and using it, dropping the Disciple, and next turn getting back the Keymaster to get an evasive threat on the board. In theory, he could take the damage here, but then we've just gotten through 5 damage, which would also be fine. Now let's make a black with that, then a blue. Activate this, getting back Slaughterhorn. Slaughterhorning, he F6'd. We get the Disciple. We have enough mana to Rogue next turn. Call of the Nightwing is very interesting. We want to put it on this, but then we need to use this for black and we won't be able to give first strike, so we should attack with the Disciple first so that we can drop the Keymaster in the same turn. Of course he can't block here. First of all, we have the ability to give first strike, but second of all, he has us on a 3-turn clock and the Disciple isn't really doing anything. Now he could be tricking us horribly here. I think we just let the damage resolve, to be honest. Looking at this board, things are looking very, very good for us. It's only bad if he has a Smite, and that block just doesn't make any sense. I think I'm going to let that resolve. If I use the Haven for red, then we just get blown out by Smite. And yeah, we couldn't afford to have that happen to us. So now we go out of the Player blocker step. We get the Keymaster into play, and then we do a double Call of the Nightwing next turn. The one disadvantage now is that we need to return our broker to our hand, but that's not a big deal. I think we are still doing fine here. I thought that he must have drawn the Smite, because if he had the Smite the turn earlier, then we would have died because we went all in on Shamble Shark and Slaughterhorn killing the white. So not too sure what exactly happened there. Now we just hope he doesn't have an answer to the Call of the Nightwing Keymaster Rogue combination. Yes, on this, okay. It's kind of unlikely that he has more and more things to do. Yeah, I misclicked there. I wanted to drop the Spire Tracer, obviously. But yeah, sometimes Cypher is a bit complicated. I just clicked F2 one too many times. To be honest, it probably doesn't make the largest difference. I don't think that we would be attacking with all our 1/1s. We do potentially lose to something like Merciless Eviction here, but I would just play out everything. He hasn't shown us anything of that sort, and him conceding there actually means that he doesn't even have it in his deck. So yeah, that was a nice showing of our cards. How to beat Orzhov with Simic, even though we don't have any removal spells. Now, Naturalize I don't think is a card we need. He has shown a Prism, but that doesn't really count. Now we're going to be on the draw, so probably our mana is a bit better than it could. Well, it could be worse. Let's put it that way. Spire Traces are not amazing. He has Gift of the Orzhova, but Mugging isn't really great against that, so maybe Naturalize is the card we want after all. I'm really afraid against Simic to just fall behind far too quickly and then be left with nothing. So I also like Leyline Phantom. I like Leyline Phantom Naturalize, but I don't think I want to give up the power of the Black Splash. However, being up one game, it's actually kind of interesting to just go for some of the blue-green cards and not having to worry about the mana base for one game. I think that's actually fine because we have Leyline Phantom, which is good against Orzhov. We have Naturalize against Gift of the Orzhova, and I'm fine with playing a Hydroform against his Gift and all the utility creatures he has. And that allows us to get rid of the Swarms. We're still playing one Verdant Haven, not optimal, but also not the worst. So I think it's better than Razor Tip Whip. Has to be. A little more green, so let's add this island and 2 forests and see how it goes. It's possible that we should have played more islands actually, because we have the Death Cult Rogue. We are on the draw and we have a great hand again. We are missing blue though, so we can actually only cast the Disciple and the Burst of Strength, but I still think that we keep this on the draw. We did make our mana better, so we now have more blue sources. We also have the Verdant Haven, and I think it's close, but I think we can afford to keep this. That's because of the 2-drop and Burst of Strength, a pretty powerful combination. I wouldn't fault anyone for mulliganing this, but if we draw an island, it's actually a very strong hand. In general, but also in this matchup. And now we are fine with any land, basically. So if he attacks here, do I have to put him on Aerial Maneuver again? It's very possible that I have to. I don't think I want to block here. I might want to get him with Burst of Strength. And that's just not possible if I trade here or run into Aerial Maneuver. I also think that most people wouldn't attack with the Syndic, so I'm going to be aware of him potentially having something. Having the Slaughterhorn in hand is not how we are going to win the game. It's not going to trade profitably, but it looks like he doesn't have Aerial Maneuver, or he wants to take it more defensively now. We still have a great draw in Island. And not so great draw in Forest. It's possibly that he's just smiting here as well. Which is why I'm not casting Burst of Strength. I think that this trade is something I have to accept if it happens. Yeah. Which has to be the reason why he stayed back with his Syndic in the first place. No, I'm going to drop a land and say go. If he attacks, I think I'm just going to go for the Burst of Strength. It does run into Aerial Maneuver and Killing Glare, but I have not that much to lose. If I draw islands, everything is fine. If I don't, then I'm losing. And I might actually get a 2-for-1 here. No, not really a 2-for-1, but getting a 3-3 and killing a Syndic, which would be great. And getting that Oars of Charm out of his hand is actually worth quite a bit as well. So now I really need an island. And here we go. Now, of course, the Phantom isn't really what we are going to be able to do here to win the game. I think we just need the Crisis. We might actually be forced to trade for the Screecher. Maybe even the Syndic. I mean, we have flyers. Could have dropped the Phantom to make sure that he doesn't attack with Syndic of Tithes. But this is fine, and we are just going to have to take the trade, I feel like. Yeah, maybe the Phantom was the right play. Would have been definitely would have been better here. We are down to 6, and he has 2 Extorters in play, and I'm afraid that we won't have the time to pressure him, to stop him from extorting, so overall I don't really like our chances here. Another flyer is great, but we need the Crisis first to trade with Assault Griffin. Oh, well, we could block... No, we could block the Screecher with the Sprite and take 3, but then we are down to 3 already. I don't think that's something we can afford to. So he has even more removal than we thought. And this game is very likely just over. Can't really do anything against his creature, and any spell on his side is going to kill us. So far he hasn't shown us any reason to believe that he has only lands in hand. More likely that he has a lot of expensive cards in hand, and that would also kill us. So that's actually sufficient. Few creatures, but even more powerful spells this time, and we were stuck on only forests for a while, so didn't really get there. And I'm going to concede here. This game is over. Now, boarding out the black to have better mana didn't really work out, given that we had worse mana than before. So we have to reconsider what we want to be doing for game 3 here. Cypher isn't the best against his removal heavy deck, but I think that us being proactive should actually help us in fighting whatever he's trying to do. That Leyline Phantom wasn't amazing. Basically drew like our 22nd, 23rd cards. I still think that Naturalize was a good boarding plan. I also like the Hydro form, but we need something else to get going, so to speak. And in the best case, get going aggressively, but Bane Alley Broker is a card that we should probably go back in to counteract his removal. So let's see. Our original setup had these 40, 2 less forests and 1 less island, and those 3 swamps, which is still kind of a risky thing, especially on the play, but I think we should be able to manage. Now, he has shown removal and flyers. I feel like Wasteland Viper and the Spire Tracers are probably not where we want to be in this matchup, simply because he has a pretty easy time blocking the Spire Tracers, so they aren't doing what they should be in the matchup. Could be great with Hands of Binding, but then again, there is the problem of him just having so much removal. So I think we should go a little bit more for the late game, taking out both Spire Tracers. We have to keep in Hands of Binding, it's too important, I feel. Even though it's kind of a bad card, it's like a tempo card against a control deck. It's not what you want to be doing. So Naturalize and Hydro form going back in. Maybe just the second Verdant Haven to get us out of range could be better than Hands of Binding. And that would actually allow us to just greedily splash the mugging rather than playing both Hands of Bindings. That's kind of pushing it, but I somehow feel that Hands of Binding is a card he doesn't have much trouble with. I'm going to run 1 Hands, not wanting to go into the red here. I think mugging is fine, but his threats aren't dangerous because they are 2/2, but because if he has a critical mass and the tempo. So let's see how that goes. Whoa, that's certainly a hand. We have a turn 2 Shamble Shark, and then we have... Well, we need to draw a black or other spells, but I think I'm not going to mulligan this. Once again, a questionable keep. Might be completely wrong, but I think that the broker is actually pretty amazing. And we do have the 3 swamps and the Verdant Havens to get it going. And of course we are also very lucky with that draw. That changes everything. Could still have a Killing Glare for the broker, which we could play around with Burst of Strength. Actually, not the most unreasonable line of play, I think. But then again, if we drop it on 4 mana and keep up 1 green, he can still play Killing Glare for X equals 1, and we wouldn't have gained anything by doing so. Okay, that's very good. Our Bane Alley Broker lives. And he only has Screechers, which aren't particularly good at racing. Now, Keymaster Rogue has the disadvantage of not being able to pump Shamble Shark, but other than that, it's a great draw, and it also fits into our curve. Here we have a Hydroform. Didn't really talk about this, but I think ambushing some of the Extort creatures with Simic is pretty nice way, not to victory, but to go about things, and kind of like it for what it does. It's not my favorite card or anything, but I think it isn't unreasonable to run it sometimes. Now, don't think this is the time to go for any kind of Hydroform shenanigans. We want the Keymaster in play, even if it means losing that island here. Also, the Alley Broker, in fact, does make Shamble Shark stronger again. Our opponent could have a pretty good Devour Flash coming up, but I don't see how we could prevent that. And there it is. So now we either get a 3/2 unblockable, or we get a 4/3 attacker that we can also Burst of Strength. Actually, an interesting question, what we need to be able to win the game here. I think having more power on our creature certainly isn't the worst, but he also has shown us smites, so just having a continuous source of damage in the Keymaster is actually probably quite important. I think we need to get rid of Shamble Shark, as sad as it is. And then we hope that he has smites and good blockers, maybe regenerating thralls or whatever, but no way to deal with the Keymaster. Whoa. Our opponent is on the Cypher plan as well, interestingly enough. It's not the worst card to have here. It's going to take us very low very quickly. That's a good draw. No, we probably don't need another swamp. No. So I think we played this forest here. It's actually important if I want to Hydroform a forest that it doesn't have Summoning Sickness, because we still want to be able to Burst of Strength. So yeah, it has to be this one. They come into play in order, I think. Now we attack with the Keymaster, and now there's a lot of good things that could happen to us. If he goes for a removal spell on the Krasis, it could be Killing Glare, and we counter it with Burst of Strength, and then we have a great blocker for Basilica's creature. Or he does that. That's even more interesting, because now we do have exactly one creature in our graveyard. So if you put a counter on the Drake Ring, it's still a 3/1, but the next creature that dies means that the Krasis dies as well. Do we want to risk that, or do we just want to ambush this creature with our Hydroform? The problem is, if we ambush the first creature, we still haven't gotten rid of the second one. I think that we Burst of Strength here and lose to a second removal spell pretty decisively. Not sure if that's correct. If he also has an Orzhov Charm, we aren't winning this game. So I feel it's okay to do that. And that's actually what I was hoping to have happen. Because now I'm able to trade these off with the Hydroform still in my hand, so that I'm not risking anything with him potentially having a removal spell for one of my other creatures. Hopefully we can draw a spell here. And that has to be a good draw. I'm tapping out of Hydroform mana, but if the Call of the Nightwing tokens don't get it done, I don't know what will, so... We aren't out of this yet, but 6 life is quite a lot against an Orzhov deck with 3 cards in hand. We can block this creature for days. And also the Assault Griffin isn't a problem. At least we have the broker to get back, to get rid of all the lands and draw some nice spells here. I think we just haven the island so that we can Hydroform with that, targeting a forest. Also gaining back some life, which is good against Extort. We get in for 3 again. Okay. Another land is actually good, because even if he has a 7-drop, he can't Extort, and we are still pretty much alive here. This Informer is, I think, not doing anything. He could mill us a bunch, but we have 22 cards in our deck. 6 lands drawn, so that's not a... Oh no, that's not true. 9 lands drawn, in fact. And a Naturalize without a target. Kind of want to use the broker, but it does mean that he might attack us with Undercity Informer, which we could still just block with a horror token. I think it's reasonably likely that we draw something nice here. Verdant Haven. Now that does gain us 2 life, but dropping that Naturalize means that he could have Gift of the Orzhova, but I think then we can still get back Naturalize, so getting 2 life here is actually worth it, I think. Maybe that wasn't too great. Probably should have just held on to the broker, not cast anything, because now he does have some things he could do, and I won't have the Naturalize to counteract it. I also don't know how important these 2 life are going to be in the end, so overall probably not the strongest play there. and that's a Corpse Blockade. That's basically just there for the extort. So if he blocks the 3/3 land and a token, he only goes down to 1, so we don't have a lethal attack here, which means that it's probably safest to just attack for 3 again and try to win on the next turn. This time I'm going to leave my broker untapped. That way we can get back the naturalize if we want and draw an additional card if we want as well. That's Syndic of Tithe, so our opponent goes up to 5, and that means he's dead on board. So he has 2 flying blockers, we have 5 flying attackers, he blocks 2 and takes 6. And that should be it. So overall, the Black Splash really paid off. I think that having those Verdant Havens to gain back some life and the power level of Bane Alley Broker, Call of the Nightwing, certainly worth it. Of course, it's a bit results oriented to talk about the one game where we took out the black and kind of kept a sketchy hand getting screwed, but it's nice to see that even a removal light deck can beat the extort strategy. It also turned out nicely with Burst of Strength targeting Drakewing Crazes to counteract the Death's approach, showing that this isn't a hard removal. And yeah, close match. Good games, certainly.